Man, SAO fans sure are aggressive. Well, at least now I can make a video about something that everyone enjoys. There were some good picks for the top slot of Reddit's best opening polls, even if all of the actual best openings got voted out in the first rounds. I'm sure I'll be able to make a good video out of the winner, then everyone will like me again. Fuck, I already covered that one. Ah, screw it, I'll cover second place. Erased. Nobody will get mad at me for saying nice things about that show. Right? Before I begin, I need to make a quick correction. I've been singing Tomohiko Ito's praises, and he deserves them, but as my patron Nixistence pointed out, it was his assistant director, Toshimasa Ishii, who was responsible for the brilliant park scene that I love so much. By the way, I have a Patreon. Give me money. Credit where credit is due, both to Ishii for his stellar direction and Nixistence for doing my research for me. I gotta spend more time on ANN looking up staff roles. Well, nobody ever said that the job of an anime opening analyst was easy, except my dad, right before he left us. So, Erased! We open on an empty movie theater, rendered in stark black and white, and I don't know about you, but whenever I see this stark manga shading style in anime, I get an instantaneous erection. Not only does it look gorgeous, but it evokes a very raw sense of emotion, as though the animators have stripped away all but the essential parts of the image. Satoru walks in to take his seat, followed shortly by Satoru. The differences in their body language convey a ton about how he's changed relative to his younger self. The older Satoru has a bored, detached air about him, while the child clutches his ticket with a big, eager smile. Given that the show uses film strips as a visual shorthand for the various timelines created by Revival, I think it's safe to say that in some way this shot represents the inside of Satoru's mind. The presence of both versions of him reflect the influence that his younger body has on his adult mind, which comes out in him inadvertently speaking his mind and being prone to other childlike behavior. The light of the projector burns these differences away, filling the screen until both Satorus disappear almost entirely. Then, as the film starts, we jump to a scene within the school. Satoru and his friends are running together, but are stopped and admonished by Yashiro as Hiromi and Kenya look on. Yashiro is one of the few characters aside from Satoru's friends who get spotlighted in these shots, and out of them, he's the only one who's not a background character. It's almost as if this OP is intentionally trying to divert suspicion from him, which only makes him seem more suspicious. And at the same time, he's kinda sinister here. His presence stops the boys in their tracks and cuts their fun short, and in a very bright shot composition, his dark suit makes him really prominent, though not too prominent. Note how Kenya's headphones and Hiromi's hair help to balance the image out. Kazu, Osamu, and Hiromi run up to give the skating kid, I forget his name, a hard time as he's macking on one of their classmates. Next we see the kids playing rock, paper, scissors in the stairwell, and lastly we see them goofing off on their school's jungle gym. These shots are simple in their meaning. They mostly serve to give a broad sense of these kids' personalities and make them more relatable. Chances are one of these shots will make you think back to your own childhood and hopefully connect with one of them a little better because of it. But these ensemble shots are also deceptively well composed, with interesting framing and enough variety that you see something different every time you watch them depending on where you point your eyes. The action on screen does a great job of directing your focus with almost no camera movement, too. The motion of Satoru and his friends running through the halls naturally draws our eyes to the center of the screen, where they're likely to stay since Yashiro's black suit is very eye-catching. When we cut, we're looking right at the skater boy, and his reaction to the other kids running up to him further grabs our attention while alerting us to their presence in our periphery. When Kazu runs in front of him, the bright yellow of his jacket guides our eyes a little further left. When we cut again, we're looking at the boys playing on the stairs. When they see Osamu approaching, they all look down, and since human beings are super attuned to following other people's eye lines, we probably do too. From there, the sudden appearance of Misato and her friend pulls our eyes to the right, where on the next cut, we're met with Kazu running along the ground. Following him, we see Osamu balancing his book bag on his head as Kazu sneaks up to scare him, allowing this small physical gag with his books to land. This whole montage builds up to this moment of levity, and it's important for that to hit in order to establish the more lighthearted side of the series' tone. So in case your eyes wander, there are visual failsafes. A lot of them. If you choose to focus on Hiromi and Kenya in the first shot, then the kids running from the right side of the screen will pull your eyes left after the cut. If you choose to focus on the girl next to the skater boy, in the next shot you're looking at Kazu, who also looks down to Osamu. If you're still looking at Kazu, your eyes will land on Satoru in the next shot, whose eyeline will then draw your viewpoint to Kazu and Osamu. Likewise, if you're looking at the kids playing rock, paper, scissors, you'll end up looking at Kenya and Hiromi, whose eyelines point in the same direction. On top of that, the colors that each character is wearing match up with whatever visual element shared their screen position in the previous shot, creating a very smooth sense of continuity from one shot to the next. Your natural inclination will probably be to follow the bright yellow and blue, which again will put your eyes where they need to be. Anyway, I've spent too long reflecting on these events, and evidently so has Satoru. We see him lost in thought, looking back fondly on his days as a child, but something urgent catches his eye. Looking down the hallway on the right, we see a red fire extinguisher and warning light, which, if you've seen my second scene analysis of the show, you know serves as ominous foreshadowing of impending danger. Also ominous, and much less subtle, is the huge torrent of water gushing from the left. The water hits us right as the drums kick up into high gear, bringing us into the metaphysical space that represents Satoru's perception of revival. This is a pretty obvious allusion to how Yashiro attempts to kill Satoru by drowning him in a river. Not particularly deep, but it's worth pointing out regardless. Satoru's movements within this space represent in a very broad manner the arc of the show's story. We start with Jun Shiratori being convicted and Satoru's life being thrown into turmoil, which comes to a head when his mother is murdered. But new suspects pop up in the form of Yashiro, obscuring his face from the camera so that he's almost unrecognizable, and Kaio's mother. Satoru is thrown into the past, where he stumbles in his attempt to save Kaio. Kenya clues him into what he needs to do, trust his friends, but by that point it's too late. In the future, he stands up, ready to make a real attempt at fighting back, but the actions of his manager and the reporter send him back in time. Every character shown has their eyes scribbled over, which masks their true nature and intentions from us. They're also framed against what looks like a police lineup wall, making them seem much more suspicious. At last, we see Satoru as a child, standing defiantly before the cold light of destiny. It's quite a moving shot. Next, we see his mom, Airi, and Kaio, the three most important women in his life, and also the three most prominent victims of the killer, who flashes by briefly in the background as it turns red. Note that his position relative to the camera is almost identical to Yashiro's mugshot. These actions drag Satoru down into his absolute lowest point. He sits torturing himself under the bridge for his failures, but a rapid flash of images fills him with determination to set things right. The following montage gets by mostly on surface meaning and is more meant to evoke a raw emotional response than deliver any deep metaphors. Firstly, we see Jun Shiratori rotting in his jail cell, alone under a pale green light. Next, we see clocks slowing to a crawl, representing Satoru's powers and his dwindling resolve. Then, as blood washes over our vision, Satoru's hit with Hinazuki lying beaten, dying in the shed. Then Airi in the hospital. Then Satoru's Grim Reaper character, who represents his aspirations and failures as a mangaka, as well as his personal failures to save those close to him. And of course, the Spectre of Death itself. And lastly, we see the brutal image of his mother's lifeless eyes as she bleeds out on the floor of his apartment. The clocks stop almost completely. But then Satoru gets up, and suddenly the clocks are spinning out of control. Things are getting crazy, but he's found the determination to move forward. He presses through biting winds and roaring flames to save the people he cares about, and even when stopped in his tracks, he looses a defiant cry to the heavens. A bullet flies forward and a clock ticks to a halt. This is the deciding moment. We find ourselves on a hospital roof with a bullet's eye perspective of Satoru as he runs away. This is a pretty obvious allusion to the last episode where Satoru confronts Yashiro on a hospital roof. The bullet whizzes by Satoru without hitting him, but the camera drops off toward the ground, again referencing how Satoru ultimately traps Yashiro. Interestingly, if we freeze frame as the bullet passes Satoru's head, we can see Yashiro reflected pretty clearly in his shattered glasses. It's not entirely obvious that it's him, but this single frame flash lodges deep in your subconscious the idea that you shouldn't trust the guy in the black suit with the red tie. Also, I really like how you can see his smirk reflected in the closest shard. In the parking lot below, all of the cars are black and white except for two. One red representing violence, and one blue representing the knock-on effects of Satoru's revival power. Lastly, we see shots of the town and school flit by. All the same shots that we saw in the initial montage, except with all of the characters removed. This is a pretty clear allusion to the title, the town where only I don't exist, and the return to the previous shots reflects the time-traveling nature of this storyline. The last shot shows the theater once more, now empty as the film reel and music wind down. These empty shots create a stark, melancholic atmosphere. That atmosphere is cranked up to 11 in the variant OP that comes before episode, also 11. This version is mostly identical to the first, with 3 key exceptions. Firstly, Satoru has been removed entirely, representing the 15 years that he spends in a coma, torn from his friends and family, as well as his lost memories. It's eerie to see this OP go by without Satoru in it and witness how easy it is for time to move on without him. These shots have enough going on that his presence isn't necessary. If this was the first time that you watched the OP, you might not even notice, but there are a few moments that just don't feel right without him. It's a really strong way of setting the tone for the episode. On top of that, all of the suspects' eyes have finally been uncovered, revealing their true nature. For the most part, they seem kind and good-willed, except for Kaio's mother, whose stare is cold and vicious, and of course Yashiro, whose eye has that telltale red gleam of a killer. The last change is the addition of spiderwebs dangling above Yashiro's victims' heads, an allusion to the spider's thread, a classic Japanese short story that serves as the inspiration for his killing spree. There's a lot to unpack in the spider's thread story that I am out of space to cover here, but if you read the manga, the meaning is made pretty blatant. If I cover the ED in the future, there'll be way more space to delve into it there. For now, if you want to see more about Erased, I recommend checking out my upcoming recap of the Winter 2015 season. And if you're looking for more on Tomohiko Ito, check out my teardown of his other series, Sword Art Online. Fair warning, it's not quite so positive. If you want to see more of my stuff beyond that, be sure to hit that subscribe button and follow me on Twitter at G0FFThu for regular updates about what I'm making, what I'm watching, and what I think about things. I also have a subreddit where you can discuss my videos if the YouTube comment section is too raw for you, and a Facebook page because, like Satoru, I live in the past. If you really like what I make, consider supporting me on Patreon. My patrons, like these awesome people on screen right now, get to vote on what OPs I'll cover next and even join me as I play games on live streams. I also run these cool anime nights where we hang out, shoot the shit, and watch old Japanimation. And if you're already supporting me, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You make what I do possible. Now, as always, this is Jeff Thu, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.